We just watched as the crypto market exploded to crazy highs. Today was a very big day for crypto, and if we actually look at the daily gains across the board, we could see a sea of green. In fact, HBAR up 5.1%. I know this doesn't seem like much, but again, it is still a nice spike across the board for a lot of these utility plays like IOTA 5.2%, Ondo 5.5%, XLM 3.6%. XRP also was up significantly today. ICP 10.4%, XRP is 2.5%, QNT is 3.3%. So again, just overall some nice gains. And of course, yes, Bitcoin was up 3.7% today, which we love to see. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about all of these moves recently. But this is what the overall market looks like. Bitcoin is at about 109.6K, Ethereum at about 2.7K, XRP at about $2.30. In terms of 24-hour volume across the board, Bitcoin 36.3 billion, Ethereum 21.6 billion, and XRP 2.81 billion. Volume on XRP a little bit lower than expected, but for the most part, we are seeing a lot of buying around Bitcoin and Ethereum, which I'm obviously going to put a spotlight on. The overall market cap of crypto, 3.45 trillion, up 4.19% today alone, which we love to see. And also, if we actually go to the top gainers and losers in the top 500, we could see that there is some very strong gains across the board for a lot of altcoins out there. So again, some pretty good moves happening in the last 24 hours. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about this because even though we are starting to see these moves happen, it is June. I said that June was going to be a huge month for crypto, and so far, it's looking pretty good, but we still need to be cautious here, right? We're still a week out from the FOMC meeting with the Fed. We are also hearing talks of the China deal, which I'm going to also put a spotlight on. But let's actually talk a little bit about Bitcoin because Bitcoin did hit a high earlier today of 110.6K. XRP did swing high around roughly $2.31.5 or so. The total high was about $2.33. We'll just round it up. And then, of course, Ethereum did hit a high of $2,724, which we love to see. But what I was outlining in yesterday's video was a few levels. Now, this is what Bitcoin looks like. We wanted to see a big break above 106.8K. I said round it up to 107K. We had a surge today that broke us out of the red zone. This was very good to see. The only problem that I see now is that we have hit a wall, and that wall is actually at a lower high. We want to see higher highs. We don't want to see lower highs because we already have been witnessing lower lows. So this is technically bearish right now until we reclaim the new all-time high, right? So we want to break over that new all-time high. It could happen within the next 24 hours, especially if we do see, positive news around the China deal. But just be prepared for anything. I always hate when we get these big surges on Bitcoin, and it's only because of how high Bitcoin dominance still is. It's sitting at almost 64.5%. So I would like to see this drop on this next big move for Bitcoin. But I do suspect that we will probably have a nice little sell-off before a much larger expansion to the upside. This is also what some of the lower time frame trading looks like, especially on like the 4 hour. Looks very similar, right? This is the 3 hour, the 2 hour, and even the 1 hour on Bitcoin. You can clearly see that we are hitting a nice little wall here. So we still have a lot more to do on Bitcoin before we are officially out of the water, but we are getting there. Now, in terms of XRP, it looks as though that higher low is going to hold for now. And I say for now because, again, we still have to get through the FOMC meeting. I still think that that's going to be one of the bigger events that we know is upcoming, right? It's something not out of the unknown, like, for an example, the China deal. That could happen at any moment. So while we are preparing for that event, price action could pick up in volatility, which is why I said, just be cautious here. But so far, we are starting to see some pretty big moves. We have yet to actually see a big move across the board for altcoins, but that is because all eyes are on Bitcoin right now with how high Bitcoin dominance actually is. But the overall view here and the overall level that I'm actually looking at XRP to clear and get a 3-day candle close over is about roughly $2.55. on the daily, we do have a nice higher level here around like $2.65. That's just like basically the midline. We really want to just see a nice push to clear some of these highs that we previously made, like for an example, the middle of May, and then we can go back to March, which is all the way up here about roughly almost $3, and then we target the highs from January. So again, a lot more work for XRP, but I do think that we will get there, especially once we do start to see alt season really pick up. And yes, I do still believe that alt season is going to happen. And let's actually talk a little bit about that, because we are starting to see some pretty big signs and signals of that. Okay, when it comes to XRP, the main thing that I was talking about previously was XRP dominance, right? Because we were still focused on dominance around altcoins while we are focused on Bitcoin's dominance, because this is still at major highs. And I did look at the 3 week, right? We were talking about the 3 week. We were talking about that key level there of interest, which we are in, right? We're just under it. The level in which that I'm really kind of watching for is potentially 66.74%. It could be a little bit higher. We could hit even 67%. But the main thing that I'm actually watching for here is a significant impulsive move off of these highs. But the main thing is Ethereum, what Ethereum is doing. Everyone seems to forget that Ethereum takes the driver's seat almost every single cycle. When it comes to Ethereum, we're just trading at about roughly $2,000, almost $700. We are starting to clear this high slightly on the 3-day. This is what the daily looks like. There's a lot of resistance here, right? We just got to be very careful of this range here, because this is where a lot of resistance actually is for Ethereum. So this is basically the red zone. But so far we have been chopping and we've been ranging on this chart, which is exactly what I've been saying over the last couple of days, is that, we're kind of repeating the same pattern down here before that huge impulsive move actually happened. And this went from roughly 1,800 to almost 2,800. So when we think about that, from our current level here, I do suspect that we break to almost $4,000. In fact, I would not write off the idea of us retesting some of these highs up here at around like roughly, I would say $3,400 to almost $3,600. And we could go much higher on Ethereum, but it looks as though we're getting some strong impulsive moves here on Ethereum at the same exact time that the ETFs around the Ethereum ETFs are starting to see significant inflows. In fact, we actually have over here bullish US spot Ethereum ETFs have now seen inflows for 15 trading days in a row, totaling over $837 million. This is very exciting to see, because again, for the last, few weeks, we have just been very bearish on Ethereum. Now you might be saying, well, Nick, I thought this was an XRP video. Yes, it is. But like I said, Ethereum typically takes the driver's seat every single cycle, which is known as phase 2 of alt season. After this, we then start to see large caps really lead the way, which is XRP. So right now, I'm really focused on what Ethereum does next, because if we start to see Ethereum really break out, I do suspect that we are going to see a huge hit on Bitcoin dominance. Very similar to that push back in January of 2021 when Ethereum started to really take off. You guys can see that impulsive move on the 3-week candle, and this continued to just cascade down all the way to, 39, almost 40%. So when we think about that, I'm still focused on Ethereum in a big way. But let's actually talk a little bit about, this China deal. So we did get the early news, right, at 6 a.m. yesterday, US and China to hold trade talks in London. Now, we did get an updated view from this, which was update US and China delegations will continue trade talks in London tomorrow. So today, technically. And, everyone is just waiting. They're waiting on the sidelines. They're just waiting for a big update from this. Now, we did hear from Trump. This is what Trump had to say. We are doing well with China. China is not easy, President Donald Trump says, while giving reporters an update about the state of trade talks between the U.S. and China. Check it out.
We are doing well with China. China's not easy, just like your home country is not easy there. I think we're doing very well. They're over there now. I'm only getting good reports. It's a little early, but they'll be calling in soon. In fact, probably when I get back, I'll have my first call from them. We want to open up China. And if we don't open up China, maybe we won't do anything. But we want to open up China. It'll be a great thing for China, a great thing for the rest of the world.
Are you willing to lift export controls when it comes to China? Did you give your negotiators any sort of limitation?
We're going to see. Look, China has been ripping off the United States for many years. Nobody charged them 10 cents. No president had the courage to charge China for whatever reason. They didn't want to do it. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. I put on tariffs on China when I got in first term. And we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. And then I did it again, but I did it for a lot of others. If you look at the stats, the deficit last month was cut in half. Everybody was shocked. I wasn't shocked. I think a lot of the people at this table weren't, because they saw the billions of dollars that were pouring in, and the tariffs hadn't even started yet, just about. They weren't cars. They were in some countries at a very minor level. And we cut the deficit in half, and it was a big story a couple of days ago. They said, I don't believe, one of the announcers on a business network went wild, said, I can't believe these numbers. Those numbers are good. The numbers are going to be very good. I think we're going to have a great 4 years.
So obviously, he's just rambling on a little bit there, but for the most part, we are starting to see a little bit of progress here with China. It could still be a week or two out before we actually see this deal completely made, but it could happen at any moment. Now, I did say over here, and I quoted it, I said, I'm just going to leave this here, because this was back in May. It was on May 10th that I put this out, and I said, as we inch closer and closer to a trade deal with China, the more we run out of time to position ourselves properly. I think this is the largest catalyst we have in front of us, and it will explode the price of not just Bitcoin, XRP, and the entire crypto space, but stocks too. So many retail investors are missing the big picture still, even though Bitcoin has already created a higher high and is now in bullish structure. Now, again, this was May 10th at 5:23 p.m. Let's go back real quick to May 10th. Here we have May 10th. Bitcoin was trading at about roughly 105K. Don't know what the actual early hours were. I'll just say 104K. We eventually ran all the way to almost $12,000 on Bitcoin. We just ranged and chopped. But if we go back, I said that we have in June the Fed rate cut decision. I think we see rate cuts start in June. It's definitely a possibility. A lot of people think the opposite, though. We don't know what we're going to get. This will also be a big catalyst. However, the Fed rate cut combined with a China trade deal would be a monster catalyst like no other, and will cause stocks to surge in a historical way. If we don't see a deal made tomorrow, I suspect we will see one announced in June. I hope you have all listened and used this time wisely to accumulate altcoins on the low while things were dropping or just trading sideways. Now, yes, I do think that time is running out. I think time is running out simply because of where we are at currently in this cycle. I also think that time is running out simply because of where Bitcoin is. But on top of Bitcoin, also Bitcoin dominance. I mean, look at where Bitcoin dominance actually is right now relative to the previous cycles. At the same exact time that Ethereum just witnessed 15 trading days in a row of significant ETF inflows, which means demand and focus is starting to shift towards Ethereum. This is where phase 2 officially begins. Phase 2 does not last long. We saw this begin in roughly the end of December into the beginning of January of 2021. And then by roughly March or even April, most altcoins were already 5 to 10x their value that, they were trading at in the end of December or even in the beginning of January. So we don't have much time left, in my opinion. Time is definitely running out. I do think that it's only a matter of time, and I do think that it is inevitable until we do see this US and China trade deal completely made, and that's going to be a huge catalyst for all markets. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because of my free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.